The internet is enormous, incredibly vast, containing almost all of human information in a large, intangible network, connecting every continent and billions of people together, allowing near instant communication and information transfer. It is one of humankind's greatest accomplishments and a thing of utility and wonder. But currently, our internet is under attack. The internet has been under attack for many, many years, decades even, by one enemy. This enemy was there before the internet's creation and began its attacks the moment it started. We are quickly improving our technology to better defend the internet against these attacks, and eventually we will be completely guarded from them. No, this enemy is not a hacker, or a cybercrime specialist, or a technician. No, the scary, albeit very interesting thing, is that this enemy is not even human. This enemy that attacks and threatens our internet is the shark. But wait a minute, sharks, you may ask confused? That doesn't make any sense. This sounds like something out of Sharknado. How can sharks possibly be attacking the internet? Well, although this does sound like something out of a bad science fiction movie, it is nonetheless factual. Let me explain how. You, your friends, and me alike most likely spend too much time on the internet, frequently checking social media, streaming video from either YouTube or Netflix, or catching up on what this so-called news is. And every video, GIF, picture, status update, or any piece of data in general that you access on the internet has an actual file size. You can get a sense of this if you were to open a video file that you have saved on your computer and check the details of the properties. You can see that it takes up space on your drive. The same thing is true for any piece of data on the internet. It is, after all, bits of code that when translated show you your special content. But because you don't download it and only stream it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't take up space. Maybe not on your computer or phone, but somewhere. You just have to retrieve it. Currently, you know the internet as a working concept, a method of information access. If you load a YouTube video from your device, it will request the video through your Wi-Fi connection, or cellular data connection, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll just focus on Wi-Fi. That request then goes to your router, which is connected to the coaxial cable in your wall, or DSL cable if you're still living in the past or somewhere undesirable. Then it travels through the miles of cable that stretch from your house to a large server warehouse that is either closest to you or the one that isn't very busy from other requests coming through. And most of these data warehouses are owned by Amazon, and Amazon itself runs the largest chunk out of the public cloud, but that's a story for another time. If that server has the information you requested, it will send it back to you. If not, it will be forwarded to the appropriate server that has that information. And if the information you seek is stored in a server warehouse overseas, then the request will travel from that server through a long, vast series of transcontinental and transoceanic cables until it reaches the appropriate server. Stored in these servers, which are just thousands of linked computers, lies the data you requested taking up space on a drive, all happening on average between 1 to 30 seconds. So while you have so many wireless connections near you at all times, the data you gather or stream comes from a large interconnected physical network of cables and servers. Those cables connect the entire world together, across ocean floors and other continents, allowing them to share information with each other in a near instant. So these series of cables are pretty important. However, these cables do predate the internet. These cables that are now used for internet data transferring were originally used to transfer phone and television data across continents, along with other data governments can use. But even those cables weren't the first ones to be laid across the ocean floor. The first cables were set in the 1850s as communication lines for submarines. Since submarines operate underwater basically all the time, the radio waves used for communication couldn't travel that far through the water to reach them. And subs rising to the surface of the water to get into a position for a better signal would be vulnerable to detection or attack from enemy forces. So the communication cables were laid on the ocean floor so the submarines could connect to them and send and receive the data that they needed. Since these cables were laid on the ocean floor, they needed to be durable to withstand the harsh and unforgiving ocean environment for decades. The actual cables that carry the information are fiber optic cables, which are basically very thin rods of glass, too brittle to handle the ocean forces. So to protect them, they are layered and coated with many different materials such as petroleum jelly, copper tubing, polycarbonate, aluminum tubing, steel wires, mylar tape, and polyethylene. Some of these outer layers act as an armor for not only the natural forces of the ocean, but, in more shallow regions, from boats, anchors, and the local marine life such as sharks. This is how the shark is able to attack our internet, the physical framework for it at least. For some reason, whenever these cables become unfastened from the ocean floor and start swaying about, it draws the attention of sharks. Sharks, being the apex predators of the sea, have a bite torque measuring several hundred pounds per square inch, enough to damage the thin and fragile fiber optic cables carrying our important internet information. Because of this, these cables need stronger and thicker armor for shark bites in the event that they become loose. No one really knows why sharks attack these cables. Maybe it's because they are just curious, or it's because they can sense electrical activity moving through the cables. All living things produce small electromagnetic fields, mainly in the form of their nerves, carrying the electrical information to their muscles, causing them to contract and move in a specific way that they want. And sharks have thousands of electroreceptor organs in their head that they use to detect the movement of their prey in unclear conditions. They can sense these fluctuations in the electrical signals in these cables, and may think that they are wounded prey, or even the pattern itself might be appealing to them. But what was once a major problem about a century ago is now an increasingly smaller problem. If countries continue to maintain these cable infrastructures, our internet can remain shark resistant for the future. And eventually, the tales of sharks attacking our internet can become the story of legend. And even the fact that the internet is a physical framework may fade even more into obscurity.